Hello and welcome back to the Masters of Cinema Ultimatum and an update video. And this will be my update for Block 2 of the Masters of Cinema Ultimatum series. You can go check out my other videos if you're unfamiliar what this series and challenge is. But it's interesting to note that I'm recording this in February 2025. I'm about to relaunch this series in March 2025 because we kind of had a bit of a great start last year in 2024, but it was meant to be a year-long challenge. But real life got in the way. A couple of family members passed away, and I'm now going to be talking about films I haven't seen, in over a year. Because I started watching the 16 films you're about to hear me talk about. I watched them in February of 2024. Now, I will be kind of refreshing myself on these films for the more in-depth version of this, where I will be kind of getting into more of the minutiae and really reviewing each film individually as one big video. But this one will be more just an update style video where I just kind of show you and then talk about which films I watched and some brief thoughts on them. And in this special instance, trying to recall my thoughts on these films after a year. Moving forward, it should be a lot more fresh in my mind. So, for example, the next one will be my update on Block 3 of the films for March 2025, and I've just watched all of those 16 films, and so my thoughts are a lot fresher. But it'll be an interesting experiment, but a good way to kind of kickstart myself back into doing this. Let's just dive right into it. The first ones that I started off with were 3 films in this set, which is the Universal or early Universal Volume 1. Some silent film classics from, well, the silent era, which I'm a big fan of. So this comprises spine number 250, 251, and 252 of the MOC collection. And we have Skinner's Dress Suit, The Shield of Honor, and The Shakedown. It does say on the back, yeah, so let's start with, well, the first one I started with, and chronologically in the set, Skinner's Dress Suit from 1926. This one does have a nice cover on the inside there. Skinner's Dress Suit is an interesting little kind of comedy film that I really enjoyed, actually. And I remember thinking, even now again, a year later, that they should have called this like Skinner's New Groove or something, because it's about this guy who, he has a happy life with his wife and everything, but at work he wants like a promotion, I think, and he kind of, he's struggling to kind of reach that next level, and ultimately there's this woman who comes in to where he works, and she's doing this fancy new dance, and he learns this dance, and because of this dance, he takes his wife to like this high society, like kind of social event, and he teaches everyone this new dance, and so they kind of frame it as like the suit gives him the power of a higher social standing, but really it's the dance that kind of unlocks everything. But it's really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. Very charming film. 1927, The Shield of Honor. The cover on this is so fucking awesome that it kind of ended up disappointing me somewhat, just because that just looks so cool. You've got a train, you've got a plane flying overhead, and I was expecting some sort of like crazy, insane stunt sequence for the film, but that part of the film is not quite as thrilling. But it is a good film, and it's about like the I don't know what you call them, the aviation air force of the police, and obviously this is like the 20s. This is like the dawn of aviation, and I as far as I remember, it is kind of like this is like the new kind of area of the police force is the police who fly in planes and stuff, and so you do get some cool stuff with the planes, and I believe there's a really nice kind of bit of tension with there's like a bank vault, and there's like, it's a good like thriller, and I really enjoyed it, but it ultimately was not quite as exciting as I would have hoped that it would be. And then the third film, we do have a poster on the inside for the third film, which is from 1927. Is it 27 or 28? Let me check that briefly. 28, The Shakedown. Oh, I should mention that the Skinner's Dress Suit was directed by William A. Seater. The Shield of Honor was directed by Emery Johnson, and The Shakedown directed by William Wyler. And so you can get kind of a little look there at the poster for this one. I love this. I absolutely adored the Shakedown. Immediately, it just feels like a whole other level of filmmaking. You know, the other two films were really good, but the Shakedown just, you know, even just like the way the camera was moving, you know, and actually following characters walking down a street, you know, it just felt more sophisticated. And it's about this guy who is a fighter, but he gets involved in kind of the world of staged fights, and kind of it's about his pride and, you know, making money by doing kind of maybe the wrong moral thing. And then he comes across this young kid, and you know, we've seen this story so many times before, where it's like a, you know, a kind of a wandering adult with no responsibilities and no partner and no child or anything, and they meet kind of a kid who's similar. They don't have anything in their lives, no parental figure, and they get forced together, and you can tell where the story's going from there. But it has a hard edge to it, which I really appreciated, and it kind of drew me into the story even more, I think. And it all leads to this big fight at the end, like a big boxing match. And it felt right out Rocky, even down to like the love interest kind of showing up near the end. But the Shakedown, I really, really loved. And I kind of felt just rolling right through at that point. Part of it was to do with kind of the shorter length of the films, and I have talked about this before, but the first block of films for this challenge, you know, 16 films in January of 2024. And then I spent the first 2 weeks of February making the video, because I'd done this hour and 40-minute extravaganza, and I ripped all the clips and stuff. So I suddenly felt like shit, I need a lot of really short films. And so that's why I was drawn to this silent film set. But also I'd seen I'd gone through the Lubitsch and Berlin sets kind of serendipitously in block one, and these are 6 films. I Don't Want to Be a Man, The Doll, The Oyster Princess, Cimarron, Anna Boleyn, it says The Mountain Cat, but I think The Wild Cat is a better title for that one. But I went through all 6 of these in the first block. You can hear my thoughts on them in part 1 of the Masters of Cinema Ultimatum. And, you know, I was kind of really digging the world of silent cinema again. It's something I'm so passionate about. So going into these 2 sets, so this is early Universal Volume 2, was something that just really appealed to me. So this image comes from the film What Happened to Jones, which we'll be talking about a bit later on. So first up there is 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, directed by Stuart Patton in 1916, going way back to the 1910s for that one. I really didn't enjoy this one that much, I have to say. It was a bit of a mixed bag, and part of it was, to be honest, to do with the fact that it is a really early film from the 1910s, and you know, the Lubitsch and Berlin set really opened my eyes to the fact that there can be really great cinema in the 1910s. I usually associate it with more kind of stuffy, stilted, you know, static films, which is understandable given the time period. But yeah, there's exceptions. You know, there's The Intolerance and Birth of a Nation, things like that. But yeah, this one just felt a bit languid. There's some good stuff in it, but you know, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, there's this mission. They go, you know, they kind of go in this ship under the water and stuff, and there's an island. And once you get to the island, there's just so many different characters. It got kind of confusing for me, if I'm being honest. But there's a sequence, I think they call it like the garden, and it's like the underwater garden. And so the leader of the mission, I forget his name already, I'm sorry, it might say on the back, and I can kind of save myself a little bit there. Captain Nemo, I was thinking, was it Ahab, or is that's the one with the whale, Moby Dick? Yeah, his ironclad steampunk submarine. It incorporates material from Jules Verne's Mysterious Island. Maybe that's where it kind of muddies itself a little bit. I just felt like it get crammed in a bit too much than it really needed to. Captain Nemo, he kind of opens up this window on the ship, and you see all this great underwater footage that was obviously shot for real. That's a really great sequence in the film. But overall, I was a little bit kind of mixed on it, to be sure. And then the next film on the set was The Calgary Stampede from 1925, directed by Herbert Blaché. I believe he married Alice Guy Blaché, I think. So this one is, I believe they filmed the real Calgary Stampede for this one, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the Calgary Stampede. I don't know if there's a poster for that one on the. Yeah, there is. Oh, I really love, by the way, the disc art for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That's really cool. I love that. That just really fits nicely. Very, very cool. Love the design. But yeah, the Calgary Stampede. It's kind of there's an incident at the beginning with like there's like a pair of lovers, I think, and someone gets killed and he gets framed for it and he has to go away, and then she sees him again. It's about the Calgary Stampede. I'd need to see it again, to be honest. I haven't retained too much of the story, but I remember really liking it and loving some of the scenery shots and the Calgary Stampede. And then there's kind of a big like rodeo event at the end that's pretty exciting, actually. I liked it a lot. Yeah, a lot more than 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It felt like more of an accomplished, well put together film. And I didn't go back to the other film in the set for a little bit, so I'm trying to go in order of the way I watch them to kind of take you on the journey of me watching these 16 films. And so we come to the reason that I probably waited a year to even talk about this film, because I feel like I could maybe talk for 3 hours about it, you know, it's in a single sitting. And this was really kind of my way, I think, of, well, it's kind of like the white whale of the whole collection for me. It was like the biggest obstacle to tackle, the longest film in the MOC collection. And so for me, it was like, you know, if I get that done early on in the MOC Ultimatum, then that'd be a big weight off. And considering how I was already behind for February of 24, I thought, why don't I just try and do Showa, Cloud Landsman. So this is spine number 100, and has 4 other films that encompass up to spine numbers 104. And I should say, just for housekeeping's sake, that the early Universal Volume 2 set is spine numbers 253, 254, and 255. But Showa, there was something, I know what it was. I think I know what it was. So my nan had got sick, and I'd taken a day off to interview my dad about as a documentary I'm making about my grandfather, and you know, it didn't feel appropriate at that point in time, once my nan got really sick, to be like, hey, your mum's dying, how about we talk about your dad that died 20 years ago. So didn't end up doing that with my dad, and I had a day off. I think it was a Sunday. And I thought, why don't I try and watch Showa? And I'd always wanted to do it in one sitting. It's like it's a 9-hour film. I think just over 9 hours, and it's in 2 parts: first era, second era. But I did watch it in one sitting. You know, I started early afternoon on Sunday, and I think I ended about 5-6 a.m. in the morning, Monday. And yeah, I mean, I'll go into it in much more detail in part 2 of the MOC Ultimatum, which would be the more polished version of this whole thing. But in a nutshell, man, again, I'm trying to hold back on some of the details because I really want to go in depth on this and talk about my entire journey with the film. Not much cover art to really show you. I think that's fairly appropriate for the film and the subject matter, I suppose. But you do get 2 discs for each respective part. But it really is this one big giant epic about the Holocaust. It's intimidating to talk about. It really is, and also such a delicate subject. And you know, just holding up a Blu-ray feels inappropriate almost. You know, talking about it feels inappropriate. It's just difficult. But watching Show was a kind of one of a kind experience for me, and I just don't know how to categorize it other than to really say that it's probably like the most important film ever made, maybe, you know, which is it's probably too lofty of a statement to slap onto it, really. But and I've been thinking about this a lot over the past year. I don't know if I have it at hand. Yeah, I've bought about four different books around the subject, which I'll go into detail with more down the line. But one book I did pick up was the complete text of Shoah. So this book has the entire movie in transcript form, all the interviews, and reading through some of it, it kind of almost recontextualizes some of it to just see it there in bold text. And man, it's just yeah, I don't know. It's just tough. It's just tough to approach. It's tough to think about. It's tough to talk about. But watching the film, I just was mesmerized in a way, and there's kind of a beauty to the film through such horrific subject matter. It's shot beautifully, and it's shot in a way that is utterly horrifying. There's certain moments and visual moments that happen as you're hearing people talking about these stories, and the visual side of it is adding more to it in some sense, and that might be a direct addition where they're talking about the SS taking prisoners of war out into the woods to shoot them and bury them in these holes in the ground before the gas chambers had really been fully implemented and designed and built. And there's just a camera, a handheld camera, as almost like a point of view going through the trees, and then it just points down at the grass, and just that alone as a kind of point of view and kind of a fresher visual to it, because there's footage of the camps after the liberation, and it's this old grainy black and white stuff. Showa was made through, I think, the very end of the 70s through the early 80s, and it's in color. It feels a bit more current, and just to see that that perspective coupled with the story, that particular story, it adds a kind of immediacy to it that recontextualizes it as well, I think. And that's what the film does, I think, is it recontextualizes some of the stories of the Holocaust. And the style of it, for anyone who isn't aware, I suppose I should say, is that you essentially have 9 hours of interviews with people who experienced the Holocaust, and from many different angles. So you have survivors of the camps. You have people who worked in the camps. Even there's a Jewish man who worked in one of the concentration camps. He worked in the gas chambers. His interview is wild, horrible. And like I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. I bought his book actually about his memoir, and I've daren't touch it, but I want to read it. It's just it's so difficult. But what Cloud Landsman did is that he, while these people were still around, he went on this journey to talk to them, and his interviewing style is integral to the film too. The way he questions people about these difficult things, and he's very persistent in a way that I think is kind of ingenious. The way that he is kind of pressing them and kind of really being specific. He is a man who wants the specifics of these stories, and he will push for those specifics. And he will do that with survivors, he will do that with historians, and he will do that with Nazis. There is a number of interviews in the film that he conducted with Nazis who worked in, and in one case, I guess, was involved in running a concentration camp. And those were done under kind of hidden cameras. And man, like, it's really admirable because it just highlights the insane inhumanity of it. I think it's Franz Komel is the main one that really just he's talking about all the stuff that they would do and what the Jewish people would do, and he's pointing at this map on the wall and stuff, and he's very open about it. And I think he'd agreed to be interviewed, like for the audio to be recorded, but not for his name to be disclosed. And it's kind of technology that's really just in its complete infancy at that point in time, like a hidden camera in the 1980s. I think it was kind of a camera that fed to the truck outside the building, which they show you footage of, which I think is kind of augmented and kind of done after the fact. But and they kind of recorded that from the feed, I think. That's at least the impression I got from the footage inside the vans. But again, the way he persists on wanting to know all this detail and to hear it in such blunt description is, again, it's mesmerizing in the worst possible way. But it goes around the world, really. I mean, a lot of it is in Europe, but there's other kind of I think there's an interview with a guy in New York, and you know, I just don't know. There's just so much. There's so much I couldn't even begin to scratch the surface of. There's a moment that I think is one of the greatest kind of match cuts I've ever seen in my life. It kind of pans up from a kind of shriveled out tree at the site of one of these concentration camps, and it cuts to this smokestack with the fire burning and stuff, and just that visual alone says so much. The ending of the first part with the trucks, where I think it's Cloud Landsman, just reading out this list of instructions from this manufacturer of these trucks on how to improve the design of the gas trucks for kind of optimal and maximum kind of killing proficiency. You just can't believe what you're, in my case, reading, but also hearing, and how that's just layered over just shots of these trucks and the wheels going over the road. He really, I mean, it's almost like unassuming to a degree, I think, and I have seen some people talk about how it's just 9 hours of people talking. It isn't, and I think that the visual side of it really is a big part of it. And there's one shot where it's just like the camera's just moving through the woods, and it's just so eerie, and you get the sense of being in the middle of nowhere, and the how trapped and they talk about it. Some of the people who are kind of around these camps and heard the screaming or whatever. It's just so, I mean, again, it's such a long film, but it's incredible. It really is incredible. And I learned so much about the way that they did things. And I think that it is a natural instinct for a lot of people, and myself included, to just be like, okay, yeah, it was terrible. Like 6 million people died. But I don't want to think about that too much. And to be confronted with it, and a guy talking about how he would find the I'm not I feel really self-conscious, because I feel like it might come across to people like I'm putting this on, like, oh, he's so flustered because he can't talk about it, but that's really how I'm feeling. The story of this guy who actually lived this and would open the door to the gas chambers after they'd been killed, and would find the bodies and the bodies of children, and the detail of it's something you never want to hear, especially if you're a parent. And I didn't really expand upon it when I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I've been thinking about this since I first saw the film a year ago. My initial reaction coming out of Showa was, wow, if every person on the planet watched this film, not that they were forced to against their will, but if every single person on the planet sat down and watched Showa from start to finish over a day or a weekend, because they wanted to, and took in everything that was being said, I feel like the world would be a much different place. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of things that have happened in recent history, because I'm not well informed enough. But I know enough to know that the horrific way that humanity treats itself, as a collective, removing the act of an individual, just looking at kind of us as a species, the way that we've treated each other, you'd think that something like the Holocaust would kind of give mankind the wake-up call that it would never need to be reminded of again. And yet, somehow, I think now that even if every person on the planet watched this, they would probably feel different afterwards. They would probably, for a moment, have a perspective change, but would then probably bury it down again and try not to think about it. And it's just sad. Like, it's unthinkable that something like that happened, and that other things like that have happened. Think about how recent, the Holocaust was to us in recent history. Like, some of my grandparents were alive when that happened. And that is, in its own sense, unthinkable, But there's just so many elements to show. I haven't even really touched on it, and it's that's how long I can kind of. Though I feel like that's how daunting it is, because it's difficult to get into emotionally. But I just think the way that he interviews these people, it's such an important historical document, but it's also such an important piece of art, because it isn't just interviewing people, it's the way that it's constructed, it's the way that it's presented, it's the way that he uses imagery. And it's not always. Sometimes it is just the person speaking for a long time. And a very important device of the film is that if it is someone who is speaking a different language than Cloud Landsman, obviously not obviously, but he's French, or was French, he's passed away now. And so if he's speaking to someone in French and they're speaking to him in French, you'll get subtitles. If he's speaking to someone who's Polish, he's speaking through a translator. So you'll see the subtitles of him asking the question, and then you'll hear the translator asking the interviewee the question, and you'll see their face as they're kind of hearing this information, and then they will answer this. And then the translator is translating it either after the fact or during the whole exchange, and then you get the subtitles. So you kind of have the kind of exact experience of Cloud Landsman, in the sense that you get the information when he gets the information. And at first, when I initially tried to watch this film many years ago, I was really put off by this, and I just thought, well, why can't you just cut out the bit where the person who's being interviewed is is kind of waiting for the question? You could cut away from it, or you could subtitle their answer and all that kind of stuff. But no, it isn't about dragging it out. There is something so interesting in people's faces when they're being asked these questions, and it is so much more interesting, I think, psychologically. And speaking of psychologically, one of the standout sequences involves a man called, I think, Abraham Bomba, who was a barber, a Jewish barber in one of the concentration camps, and he would cut the hair of prisoners who were about to be killed. And there's this scene, you can call it a scene, I guess, where he's cutting hair in a barber shop and he's talking to Cloud Landsman, who's behind the camera. And Bomba's a really kind of, almost a bombastic kind of character. He's very expressive when he's telling the story of, and he speaks in English in this sequence. And he's telling the story of how he would cut the people's hair and stuff as he's cutting hair himself. Now, this was set up. This is something that Landsman kind of orchestrated. Like, I want to film you in a barbershop cutting hair as we tell this story, to put you through the motions of what you did before. And he's telling the story, and it's riveting stuff. And then he just gets to a point in the story where he cannot continue. And he's like, no, I can't continue. And Landsman is like, you must continue, you must. And it feels like it's about 5 minutes of him just unable to speak, and we just linger on it, and it is so powerful and says so much without him saying even the story itself. And he does eventually finish it, but it's almost a testament to the perseverance of the people who did survive it. It's wild to even imagine the fact that so many didn't, but it isn't really a story about survival. It is a story about death, and it does not shy away from that. Anyway, I thought it was an absolutely incredible piece of cinema, and an unspeakably terrible moment in history, movement in history. So after watching that, I really wanted to keep going, and so I did look into the 4 films after Showa that are included on this box set. There is a Criterion set of Showa, and I would say that the Eureka version is in some ways superior. It has an extra film, and the film Sobibor, October 14th, 1943, 4 p.m. That film is in high definition on this release. It's not on the Criterion. So, again, there's not much to show here on the cover. But I kind of crisscrossed through these 4 films throughout the rest of the second block. So, A Visitor for the Living. This one concerns a man who, and this film is just an interview, a single interview that Landsman did, I think near the beginning of the project. And it's a man who I think worked with the Red Cross, and he visited a concentration camp to kind of assess the conditions, and he also visited the Theresienstadt ghetto. And his reports were that all seemed well. And Landsman kind of grills him, and I learned later that he kind of showed up unannounced to his house with a camera crew and kind of flustered him into it. And I'll say this, it's an hour long, I think, and I was kind of watching it, kind of captivated by this interview and the way Landsman was kind of telling him these facts. And then I looked at the running time, and like there was only like 8 minutes left. How did like an hour like pass that quickly? Like it really drew me in. A Visitor from the Living. Then we have Sobibor, October 14th, 1943, 4 p.m. I think, yeah, these are split across 2 discs, because the last one is The Last of the Unjust. That one is like a 3.5 hour long film, so that one has its own separate disc. Sobibor, October 14th, 1943, 4 p.m. That is a story of survival, and it is captivating, absolutely captivating. It is a single interview again. This one's about an hour and a half, I think, something like that. And it follows the story of a man who was involved in, what would you call it? A coup, a revolt, a kind of orchestrated escape from one of the concentration camps. I forget which one it was. Oh, Sobibor, of course, at 4 p.m. on October 14th, 1943. And it's a single interview that's a feature length, and it's just this guy telling his story. That's another thing about Showa. There are no archival images or video material. It is just the footage that Cloud Landsman shot and the interviews with the people, which makes it, that's another really interesting, distinct choice. With Sobibor, I think there is a few images maybe, but it's mainly just this interview of a guy. And I kind of like how it kind of starts, and you can see the outside of his window, and then as the interview wears on, it's kind of becomes night. But this story of, like, I think he was a teenager or very young, and he tells the story of him being transported and stuff, and eventually kind of the planning and the execution of the escape, and it is just fucking incredible. I saw a review that said something like it's like a great action movie with no action, just words. But and another thing I really loved about it, there's kind of a bit of a poetic end to it. But then Landsman makes a really interesting choice with the end credits of Sobibor. I think it's about 10 or more minutes that just lists, like, I'm not even sure, again, it's been a while. I'm not even sure if it's just from the Sobibor camp. I think it's every concentration camp from the Holocaust. I'm not sure actually. Man, maybe I should look that up. I don't know. I might do that at the end, just to kind of, but either way, it's like 10 minutes of just lists of like how many people were killed, on this date, on this date, on this date. And it just goes on and on and on. And I think Landsman narrates it as well. And the longer that you sit there, the longer that it goes, the bigger the numbers get, it was almost more impactful than the entire 9 hours of Showa, because it's there in black and white, and you just have to sit there and listen to it and read it. And it just brought tears to my eyes. It was just so powerful and such an interesting way to kind of just really shove it down people's throats. Like, these are the numbers. Let's go through them. No, let's go through all of them. Yeah. I mean, it was a real powerful capper to an already powerful story. The Karski report. I'll just go through all of them now. This one was kind of disappointing. It's an interview with Jan Karski, who, his part in Showa is just, I'm trying to think of another word other than mesmerizing or captivating, but it's really striking. He talks about his visit to the Theresienstadt, not the Theresienstadt ghetto, the Warsaw ghetto, I should say. And his vivid descriptions of it are just so haunting. And Landsman had interviewed Karski over 2 separate days, and the first day was what you see in Showa. The second day is what you see in the Karski report. And he's much more composed in that interview, and the story itself of him meeting the president and trying to convey what he'd seen and kind of what the Nazis were doing. It doesn't have the same register. It's nice to see it, but it didn't quite pack the same punch. And then finally, The Last of the Unjust, which is a 3.5 hour long film, which came out, I think, in like 2013 or so. It might say on the back of the box set here, I'm not sure. Yeah, 2013, 218 minutes in length. And it cuts between 1975 and 2012, detailing Cloud Landsman's mid-70s Rome interviews with Benjamin Mermelstein. And he was the last Jewish elder in the Theresienstadt ghetto, so he survived it. And he goes to meet this man. I think he spent like a week with him in Italy, near the beginning of production, 1975. And a fascinating film. What I really loved about it was that in the 2012 segments, you see Cloud Landsman going to the Theresienstadt ghetto as it was then in present day. And this guy who spent decades working on these Showa films is now an old man. And there's this old man walking through this kind of ghost of a place that has so much horror behind it. And it was a place that was concealing so much horror. It wasn't a camp in the same sense of the death camps, but it was, the seedy underbelly of it all was really sinister. But it kind of focused on and kind of brought in a lot of elder Jewish people. And so to see Landsman as an old man kind of shuffling about this place added a real kind of interesting quality to it. And then seeing the interviews with Benjamin Mermelstein, who's such a cartoonish kind of character, and their relationship as it kind of evolves over the film is really, really interesting. So a really, really good film, and another interesting slice of the whole kind of Showa canon that Landsman created. And, I just think it's really, really important stuff. I'll leave it there. So something a little bit lighter, for sure. This would be spine number, what would it be? The third one. So it'll be spine number 235 in the collection. It is part of this 3-film set. Bela Lugosi in the adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's Murders in the Rue Morgue, The Black Cat, and The Raven. So 3 Universal Pictures, and the one that I watched was the last one I'd yet to see, which is The Raven. Quote The Raven nevermore. So, who directed this one? I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. You probably heard my stomach rumbling then. Where is it? The Raven. Prolific B-movie director Lou Landers made 1935's The Raven. It was banned in the UK for 2 years in its wake. Bela Lugosi plays a plastic surgeon obsessed with the writer Edgar Allan Poe, and tortures fleeing murderer Boris Karloff through monstrous medical means. Yeah, from what I remember with The Raven, Boris Karloff comes to Bela Lugosi, who's this plastic surgeon, and he says, "I want you to change my face," because well, it's to do with looks in a sense, but what I kind of really enjoyed in a perverse kind of way, I think, about The Raven was just how much glee Bela Lugosi took in in being evil. Because he kind of he messes up Boris Karloff's face, his character, and he basically says like, you know, I'll fix your face properly, but only after you've done my bidding. And it's like it really reminded me of Emperor Palpatine at times. Like you just got Bela Lugosi just like cackling like the Emperor. Like he's just so over the top villainous in The Raven, and again being kind of like a fan of Edgar Allan Poe was kind of an interesting twist, I suppose. And he has a raven as well in his house, and then it kind of turns into this kind of like old dark house thing where you got like a bunch of people and you know there's shenanigans and things. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. And I just love seeing Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff together. They're just kind of dynamite. So it was a good, enjoyable film. Not quite on the. I think I'd have to revisit The Black Cat. It's been a long time since I've seen that one. But yeah, The Raven, I enjoyed it. It was a good time. And again, I'll revisit everything and kind of go through it all when I do my big. So here's the thing. This has gone on for like almost an hour itself. At this point, it probably will hit an hour. And this is me speeding through this stuff. Next we have Spine number 80, a Robert Altman film. This is Nashville from 1975. I struggled to get into this one, to be honest with you. I enjoyed it very much. It's quite a long film. It's 160 minutes. A huge ensemble. You probably would say on the back here, Henry Gibson, Lily Tomlin, Keith Carradine, Geraldine Chaplin, Barbara Harris, Karen Black. You got Jeff Goldblum in there as well, Ned Beatty, Shelley Duvall. Yeah, this one, I don't know what it was. There's just so many characters. It's about this like, I think it's like a week in Nashville, and there's like a political like thing going on where there's an election going on. There's like a music festival going on. There's all these kind of like country stars who've flown into town. Henry Gibson kind of plays this kind of like he almost like runs the town in a way, and he's a singer, and I do love all the music in the film. There's another singer who she's like kind of fragile and stuff, and she's being pushed to perform even though she's not in a fit state. And there's so many elements. I would definitely like to see it again, but I don't know. Like I loved it and I didn't. Like it's just a hard one to kind of quantify. I don't know. It's definitely one to reconsider. There's a really horrible scene with this young woman who thinks that she's going to kind of make it as a singer, but she's terrible, and she gets hired to do this performance, and ultimately she kind of realizes she's just there for her body, to the point where they're just like ravenous men, kind of just like slobbering all over her, and they just wanted to take her clothes off, and it's really terrible. And it flips between those moments of seriousness and then just like real, just like comedic, you know, I don't know, just carefree comedy moments, and not broad comedy, but like just throwaway gags and things. And yeah, Lily Tomlin's character she's going through quite an interesting moment of infidelity, and I just don't feel like it all fully came together for me. There's a very dramatic ending, which kind of felt almost like it was out of nowhere, even though the film kind of signposted a lot of it. I don't know. I'd need to see it again, but it's one that I know has a big reputation. I didn't feel like it quite lived up to it. However, a film that does have a fair reputation behind it and over-delivered as far as I'm concerned. This is Spine number 187 from 1932, directed by James Whale. The Old Dark House. I mean, the original Old Dark House. The template, in a way. Man, this film. Is it the same artwork on the inside? No. Oh, great original artwork. Look at this. Beautiful. 4K restoration. Film looks incredible. It's brisk. It's like 72 minutes. I fucking loved this film. Holy shit. One of my all-time favorite horror films now. Just the vibe of it. Set in Wales. Not that that really plays into it too much, but there's this couple. I think there's more than a couple of people actually who turn up to this old dark house. It's raining. There's a storm, middle of nowhere, and they go to this old stone building and stumble into like this crazy family, and it's all like shadows and like just the geography of the house and that hallway with the wind and the woman. Just every actor is just firing on all cylinders for the parts that they're supposed to play. And then you got Charles Lawton, you got Boris Karloff, Gloria Stewart, and you get kind of these archetypal characters that you see throughout horror history, but they all just kind of, it just seems like it was meant to be. Like there's just like a symbiosis between all the characters, I think, where it just, every part is informing the other one. I don't feel like there's a weak link. Some of the characters are more broad or obvious or stronger, but the other ones kind of, they wouldn't work as well without the other character. I just think that as an ensemble, it's incredible. The mood of it, the feel of it, the black and white, the wind and the location and the sense of isolation, and then just the mystery of like what's upstairs, where's the other members of the family that get talked about, what we don't see, the kind of quiet hushed words between the family members, and there's just some real jaw-dropping moments. And there's a scene in the film where it's this big reveal, and I was just clapping in my living room, just like, just the way that they did it was so good. I love this film so much. It's brilliant. I threw this one in there because I really needed a quick film, and it's from Spine number 22 in the collection, The Insect Woman by Shohei Imamura. It isn't the film I watched, though. It comes with a second film called Nishiginza Station from 1958. It's his second feature film. Although it's only 52 minutes. That's kind of feature length, kind of. It's kind of brushing shoulders with short films and theatrical films. Nishiginza Station, probably the film I remember the least a year out, but it's kind of this farcical kind of comedy that's framed with this guy in Tokyo who's kind of like singing and telling the story of this man who works in a drugstore, and his wife goes away, and he's got this dream of like a tropical island and stuff, and then he kind of flirts with infidelity. Well, that's almost a joke within itself. And I remember just being really amused by it and just really charmed by it. And I went on Letterboxd, and it was kind of fairly middling to like thumbs down. But I really enjoyed it. It's not great from what I remember, but I just remember it being quite fun and different, playful. I enjoyed it. It was very good. And then I ended with what I felt like I should end it with, because I'd already gone that far. And I decided to watch the final piece of Claude Lanzmann's Showa canon, as I'm calling it. This is Spine number 202 in the collection from 2000, and it doesn't say on the back. I think it's 2018. It says 2017 on the back. We'll go with 2017. Showa, The Four Sisters. So these were initially released on television, I believe. So in a sense, it's actually 4 films. But you could view it as kind of one big piece. And it is kind of billed as that on the back here. It's 237 minutes, 4 hours long. Showa, The Four Sisters. So this is, again, the final Showa film from Claude Lanzmann, and split across 2 discs. And they each have their own presentation with like a little title card and credits at the end. So it really is 4 other films. Oh, it says released in theaters the day before Claude Lanzmann's death in 2018. So I guess the copyright on the back there began in 2017. So it is much like some of the other extra show films. It's just interviews. And I don't know if it will say on the back of their names. Yeah, so we have Paula Beeran, Ruth Elias, Ada Lichtman, and Hannah Martin. So I watched them in they had their own titles as well: The Hippocratic Oath, The Merry Flea, Baluti, and Noah's Ark. So I believe it opens with the Ruth Elias interview, which is, I think, the longest one. And I was stunned again, and I've bought her book as well. I mean, it's like maybe the worst story out of the whole thing. And she's only in the film Showa very briefly, and her story is fucking incredible. She's this woman here. The amount of times that she left a concentration camp and almost got out and then was taken back again. But I mean, she was pregnant and had to give birth in Auschwitz, I believe. And the stories that she tells, I just cannot believe the strength of that woman, if you can even call it strength. Is it just blind survival instinct? I mean, of course, some of it is, but to have lived through that and to live beyond that, I think, is just one of the most amazing things that some people are able to do. You know, her story is unbelievable. Again, a book that I've bought, I want to read, but I'm kind of intimidated by because of the story and what I know of it. The next one is Ada Lichtman. This woman here. I actually found this one really, gotta choose my words carefully. Just compared to some of the other stories, it really didn't grab my attention. And the fact that she sat there knitting throughout it, and I think her husband is there and he's very quiet and it's awkward. It was losing my attention a little bit. Again, horrific stuff at times, but it definitely was the weaker of the four interviews, I thought. And then we have the Paula Beeran interview, which is very interesting. Psychologically, I guess. Again, I guess because arguably she hasn't had as much of a struggle as some of the other people who were interviewed for the entire project. And it feels like that she has a lot of guilt over some of the things because she worked in one of the ghettos. Very interesting interview in the way that Landsman kind of presses her on certain pieces of information. Yeah, that's probably the second standout of the project. And then the final one, Hannah Martin, was another very fascinating story to end it on. But I just feel like you kind of front loaded the thing so heavy with the Ruth Elias interview that it was hard to almost come down from that. It just in terms of like, that was such an amazing, horrible story, and I can't believe what this woman has been through. And that's the terrible thing as well, isn't it? You then hear other horrible stories like, well, it wasn't that bad, and it's just, it's a terrible, terrible thing to think. But when you're kind of contrasting, I guess, if you have these four interviews and then you run them one after the other, I guess you do kind of compare in some way. But just to the point of like, the first one is just like, it just jaw dropped, and then you do get desensitized to it, which is terrible. And then the next story is like, man, that's terrible. It's not as bad as, what I just heard. But so I don't know, maybe in that sense, presenting these four interviews as kind of its own single experience is not the best way to do it. And maybe the best way to do it was as 4 episodes of television. I don't know. But, I'm really glad that these were released in their full form. Unfortunately, they're not restored. So it is kind of the tape masters. And that's something that adds to, for me anyway, as an enthusiast of film, because even just those little details of facial expressions and things. Excuse me, I'm probably have to make some awkward edits because there's dust flying everywhere. It's going down my throat. yeah, even just subtle, details in interviews, I think you can bring out more of it, and there's more of a quality to kind of film that I don't know, is nice. Although maybe looking for something that's nice quality when again telling these horrible stories. Again, I feel like I'm second guessing myself on saying anything that could be construed as offensive, but I should probably just let go of that because I'm only human after all. But I just think that the transfer on Showa is incredible, and that adds to it because you're just seeing really crisp and filmic images that put you right in those places that he films, and it just adds so much. And yeah, maybe in interview format, and it's not like I was thinking about it that much, but I did notice they were in standard definition, so it's just one of those things. But Showa, the Four Sisters, and that's it. That is the second block of this whole thing. And goddamn, that I really tried to whiz through that. I guess Showa took up a big chunk, and that's where I'm worried about doing the main extended portion because, yeah, and I feel like now anyone who's listened to this and watched this, they're not going to want to watch the big part 2 version with all the clips and stuff. So maybe this is a folly. I don't know. Maybe I'll try and condense it down for the next one. We'll see what happens. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, even though there's some pretty heavy subject matter. And let me know if you've seen any of these films and any other thoughts you have about the Masters of Cinema collection. Picking these films was fairly random in terms of the order and stuff and what I was going to watch, but like I said, the methodology behind doing Showa was to get the big one out of the way. And I'm glad that I kind of, as I was in the mode and mindset of watching Showa, I went through all the other ones and kind of got that done, especially considering some of the extended running times of those films. So I feel like I'm not going to be stuck at the end of this thing with like a whole bunch of really long films. But there's still a few more really long ones in there that I want to kind of get to in the first half, in like the first 6 blocks. But we'll talk about that when we come to it. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Or will I? I totally forgot to circle back around to the other film in the early Universal Volume 2 set, which I watched near the end. So it was probably like before I watched like Nishiginza Station and Show of the Four Sisters. I came back around to What Happened to Jones from 1926. Now, as far as I'm aware, they've listed it on the cover here as What Happened to Jones with a question mark. But from everything I've read, there is no question mark, and it's not What Happened to Jones, and it's more What Happened to Jones. Here it is. So that's kind of what's depicted here. These two guys, Jones is about to get married, and he gets roped into a poker game, and then they get caught by the authorities, and they escape out of the back of the building, and they end up in this like, there's like a Turkish bath establishment, and the night before his wedding. And so he's running around in towels and, you know, head caps and stuff. And then it's like a whole comedy of errors in What Happened to Jones. And it's the same guy who appeared in Skinner's Dress Suit, I believe, Reginald Denny. And he's a really likable actor. And so I really enjoyed... Oh man, that's awesome. There's a commentary on What Happened to Jones by David Kalat. I love his commentaries. I'm so glad he's done a commentary on that. I'll have to check that out for sure. That's awesome. Yeah, I really loved What Happened to Jones. It was just super fun. Like there's just a real air of fun and enjoyment to it. So it was a nice one after a lot of the heavier films in this block. Right, definitely done now. Definitely finished. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
He says he's really cool, but I think he's a tool. Even though I'm sure he's a quite nice guy, really. He's a quite nice guy, really.